What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bingetown TV. This is Brian here with my co-pilot Kyle, and today we're going to be talking part 5 of the Apple TV Plus limited series Masters of the Air. At this point, you guys know the drill. I'm going to take this opportunity to reroute you over to bingetowntv.com, where you can find pretty much all of our links to our socials, our backdated episodes. We've covered over 50 shows at this point. Usually fantasy and sci-fi is our bag, but of course we're doing Masters of the Air. So we kind of just do whatever we want, whatever's popular at the moment. What do we have on the back burners? We are looking forward to, in quotations, Avatar: The Last Airbender, which
Yeah.
is dropping this Thursday. We are cautiously optimistic about that, but we will definitely be covering it. More actual optimism is for FX's Shogun, which is just building in anticipation, and early trailers look spectacular. We just wrapped up on True Detective Night Country, which had a pretty controversial ending, as I am reading, but
Yeah.
I I think the Night Boys were pretty positive about it. And other than that, we're hitting the traders in the background. So that is kind of our mixed bag of what we have going at Bingetown TV right now. And you can find it all on bingetowntv.com. So that's all out of the way. Let's get into this episode, part 5 here. And I mean, they're called the Bloody 100th. Well, I don't know what else we were expecting, but this one was brutal, and I was holding out that maybe there would be like this really triumphant episode because we lost Buck in the last episode, and maybe Bucky would have this opportunity to take his frustrations out, but that was not the case. This turned out to be quite possibly our worst mission to date in terms of forts lost and crew members lost, and that would be, of course, the mission to Munster. And yeah, this was a brutal episode. It kind of just had a somber tone from start to finish, but it is what it is. The bloody 100th.
Yeah, it's tough. It maybe would have been triumphant if it wasn't real life. If it was genuinely scripted to a higher degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, just very hard. I thought that the way that it was done was very good. I think it obviously the content itself is emotional, but I think also the way that they did things heightened, the level of emotion to it. And this was the first episode that made me cry, which, I mean, I'm honestly a little shocked it took us this long, but it's just there's not
What
much to
part could
say.
I ask specifically?
Definitely at the end, Kraz going through
Yeah,
bubble stuff was definitely tough. That's just a hard scene, and there's just like a lot behind it that we'll obviously get to and talk about.
sure.
Yeah, it's really not much to say, but just holy shit.
Well, I guess the one silver lining is that our lone survivor, if you will, Rosie Rosenthal, is a new face to the group. And if we have our two heroes in Buck and Bucky kind of exiting the fray, a new hero arises in Rosie Rosenthal, and he kind of showcases his ability as an aviator and just his chops and his mettle as a crew pilot. But yeah, so I guess we do start off the episode with a bit of good news. Based on part 4, we had lost not only Buck and DeMarco, but also Major Kid and Crosby. And per part 4, I think they said no, they dropped out of formation over the IP, which usually leads us to assume bad news and they are dead. But no, we begin the episode with Blakely, Cross, and Dougie, our boy
Yeah.
Dougie, returning to Thorpe Abbott. And
Yeah, I mean, this was as happy as it got. I mean, you could see,
exactly.
yeah, the level of relief when their friends notice that they're back. And we have a really nice Kraz and Bubbles moment. We have kind of it's funny in the moment when they go back to their hut and there's people there, but it's also crazy to think about. It's like that's how quick they replace you. They had been gone for, I don't know if they say
Yeah.
exactly, but there's already somebody else sleeping in your bed type of deal. So yeah, a lot of different angles to this.
Yeah. And I think I will take this opportunity to say, I guess you could call it a historical inaccuracy, but I kind of want to just go through what actually happened with the real Crosby. So they did have an emergency kind of crash landing off the coast after the Bremen mission. And Crosby actually did not fly in this mission, nor did he receive the promotion that we see in this episode until November of the following month.
Whoa.
And kind of going along with that, Bubbles actually what Bubbles dies in this episode, spoiler alert. That doesn't happen for another couple months in reality.
Ooh.
So a little bit of a
Condensing the timeline a little bit.
yes, but I also think they wanted to take this opportunity to give us the point of view of Cross in headquarters and more of that group navigator role. Where they were was actually after that crash landing, they had I guess it was just a rest for their damaged fort in Bournemouth. So shout out Cherries, but
Yeah.
they
Dominic
were.
Solanke.
Hey, he's been doing me
Big
well in
Dom.
FBL. That's Big Dom. Yeah,
Shout out Big
actually
Dom.
just transferred him out. Probably should have kept him. Adebayo. We're getting too deep in the weeds here with FBL talk.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no, so Crosby, not only did he not receive the promotion in October, but he also was not a part of this mission. So I just kind of wanted to give that historical context here. But the narration that we get from Crosby is essentially Bremen sucked. That was our worst mission ever. Well, personally, his worst mission ever. Heaviest flak he ever saw. They just barely made it out. And kind of this whole scene is just him giving props to Blakely, who got him out alive. And in typical Crosby fashion, refusing to accept the praise because Blakely says, nah, dude, if you were 1 degree off on your navigation, we would have been doomed. And he said, nah. But it's one of those scenes where you take what you can get. They thought these people were dead, so everybody's cheering. They're having a few drinks. And again, going along with the episode, Bucky comes into the room and says, yo, Chick Harding is looking for you. And Bubbles puts two and two together because he had just said, yo, they're looking to shake up operations. So Bubbles is going back to a crew position, and our boy Crosby is moving up in the ranks and becoming the group navigator.
Yeah, that transition, that change felt ominous. Felt like we're setting up for this type of like dodge a bullet, survivor's guilt type of storyline, which obviously comes through in the end, unfortunately. And that kind of seems to be I'd say, the major themes of this episode is that level of survivor's guilt that's involved. I think it's going to be interesting moving forward. This is just a very high level take at the start of this episode, but just seeing how Rosenthal's crew and Kraz deal with the fact that they're still around while things very easily could have been, flipped on its head, and Kraz obviously could have still been flying while Bubbles could have been on the ground. The letter could have been sent, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just had that feeling when they kind of swap positions like that. And I was like, oh, this is setting up for something not fun.
I'm also interested in what the logistics are now that the 100th is literally down to one fort. I mean, this mission was flown in a kind of a bare bones, they only had 17 forts that flew out. I think only 13 made it. So I kind of looked at the trailer. It seemed like they were in an estate or something. So I'm not sure if we're going to get another mission. I guess what I'm saying is I'm interested in the logistics of they only have one fort. What do they do trying to kind of rearm themselves and get more forts available? What do the crew members do in the meantime when they're not kind of actively going on missions because they can't with just one singular fort? So a couple questions.
Yeah, it seems like they could just get absorbed almost into another squad. Just in the mindset of, like you had brought up last episode, and again, seems to be one of maybe the other central theme of this episode is the command's kind of disregard almost for the human beings involved and just seeing them as numbers and tail numbers, essentially, things like that. So I wouldn't be shocked if it was just, hey, we've got a mission in 2 days. You guys are now just part of this. Tough shit.
Yeah, for sure. And this kind of early scene, I think it framed it really well because, they're all celebrating that Crosby and Blakely made it out alive. And then they see Bucky enter the room and everybody just kind of drops their voices because everybody knew that Bucky was on a weekend pass, and he's like, "Boys, you don't gotta do the math on why I'm here right now. We got another mission tomorrow." And that starts all the whispers of, "Holy crap, they're making us fly out again." Just to set the context, it is October 10th, 1943 right now. The Bremen mission was October 8th, and there was actually a not shown mission to Marienburg that was flown on October 9th, which is southeast Germany, I believe. So that
Okay,
was
that's far.
a comparatively long mission. Yeah, so that was also an exhausting mission, just kind of painting the picture of these men are exhausted even more so than they would be if they were flying one mission a week. This is the third mission in as many days, and that is a very big sticking point. These men are at their wits' end.
Yeah, and the briefing scene that's right after this, I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure it's right after this, is, I mean, they're not happy. You know, the
No,
other ones, earlier ones, are kind of like, woo, like they see the targets and there's some hooting and
yeah.
hollering and things like that. And now it's the vibe is completely shifted. Rightfully so, obviously, but it's obviously palpable.
Yeah, and that's for a couple reasons. One, like you just said, they're flying their third mission in as many days. They are worn out, but also this is a little bit of a psychological shift in the Americans' philosophy. They are targeting the city center of Munster, and the 100th will be joined by the 95th and the 390th bomb groups. But again, that city center of Munster. And in the show, they said that they're targeting the industrial railroads, trying to disrupt the transportation of the Ruhr Industrial Valley, whatever. I've been reading on it. The declassified mission notes were that the target of this mission was quite literally the cathedral steps in the city of Munster and they were targeting noon on Sunday, which is
Yeah.
exactly when church lets out. I actually read there was an account of one deeply religious pilot who kind of spoke up against his commanding officer and said, I I feel morally opposed to running this mission. And he was threatened with a court martial. So eventually he did fly. But, you know, it seems from what I'm reading, that was something that the United States Air Force took pride in, the fact that they were doing these tactical bombing raids on industrial military targets, as opposed to what the RAF were doing and what they highlighted in part two of just the indiscriminate nighttime bombings where they didn't care if they were bombing civilians. And I think they did a pretty good job of showing this from the reaction of the men. Like you said, there was a somber tone during the briefing, but that is the reality of what this mission was, and it was very different than what they had been doing.
It seems Crank kind of filled that role of that
Yep.
the the very religious pilot from real life, the commanding officer in this case being Bucky, who obviously does not give a fuck. The line was, I mean, he's right when Crank says to him, with these people that were bombing, they didn't kill Bucky, like, or Buck
Yep.
rather. Like, this is not what it's about. The other guy says, like, we didn't sign up to kill women and children, and Bucky's kind of completely adopted that RAF mindset of it's literally war. Like, this is just what it is.
There is a quote from the book Masters of the Air. The real Bucky Egan was celebrating that they were finally starting to target civilians, and he said it was the ideal mission for someone who was trying to get revenge for a friend. So he was all in. I think he said this is our chance to, attack the people that are birthing minority oppressors, something like that. So the real Bucky Egan was pretty all in for this change in philosophy, but I
It's just so tough. It's interesting to think about, but interesting used very loosely. Like, there's not a shred of envy of like their position. Like, I don't feel that there's an ability to judge, Bucky's take on that. You'd have no
Mhm.
idea what that would feel like, type of deal. It's just kind of shocking to see.
Well, I kind of put together that the mindset, even for the RAF, probably changed after
Yeah.
years of being at war with the Germans. They eventually just went like, we don't care who we're killing,
Yeah.
civilians, military. We're just trying to beat these guys. And when the Americans joined, I'm sure they went to it with their ideologies. And
Yeah.
I'm
Well
sure
said.
that kind of devolved into what we're seeing here,
Hmm.
where,
Yeah.
years at war will do that to you and change your mindset.
Yeah. War is hell.
War is hell. Let's see here. Yeah, so Bucky is going to be the commanding pilot for the 100th. He's going to be flying with our boy Brady. And again, like I said, this was a bare bones operation. They only had 17 forts to spare, I believe, kind of the number you're looking for a full combat wing or whatever. I'm probably not getting the terminology right. Is around 21. So they're about 5 forts short. And as we see subsequently, 4 fly back for mechanical failure. So only 13 really make it across the channel to even approach Germany. I mean, this is just painting the picture of this is going to go terribly wrong.
Yeah, and this was the first time that I remember them kind of showing us the escorts. Like they
Yep.
mentioned it in the big mission in part three, which it began with an R, which I'm misremembering, and they landed in Africa. They mentioned it. Obviously, big part of that mission was they didn't come. So that was just
Mm-hmm.
an interesting change. And we talked about it last episode, how it was kind of nice to be on the ground. And then this episode, it was really nice to be, well, nice in quotations, to be in the air. It was like, the heart's pumping again, like the flax coming in, all
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff. This was obviously emotionally devastating scene, but it was fucking, I mean, it's just television that I'm glued to my screen.
Absolutely. I must admit I was kind of craving being back in the air
Yeah.
as well. And I also noted this was definitely the first time they highlighted the fighters circling, but sure enough, they noted, okay, it's going business as usual across the channel. Okay, the fighters have to go back to refuel.
Yeah.
That's when the flak starts and when they get hit by waves of Germans, but perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. So Crosby sees off the boys. We've seen this scene before. They go from briefing into the transport trucks to board their planes. And like we said, we've lost a bunch of forts. So a lot of people are flying in their backup forts. And I think this episode was kind of cool because they gave us a lot of names of the ships, and
True.
all of the ships' names are like perfect, exactly what you would want a ship's name to be.
She's gonna got me good.
She's
That was
gonna, yeah,
that was, I mean, looking back, that was a nice send off almost of their relationship.
yeah.
It just was funny. It just brought a smile to both of their
Mhm.
faces. That was a good parting, as good as there can be.
And he does return the snow globe. Another thing to note is that Bucky insists with Major Kid that they trade their jackets. And that actually happened. And for the reason that Buck always hated the sheepskin jacket. So he did not like that style. So Bucky wanted to honor his fallen comrade, which the show, the research that I do always suggests that this show does a really good job of getting some of those cool details right.
That is good. And that, something like that is, I would consider that like a layup. Like if they missed something like that, it would seem like an issue almost. Not that I would notice, obviously, but things
Somebody
like
would.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Similar to the kind of baseball code terminology that Bucky was using to confirm that Buck
Yeah.
had fallen.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, all our go. It was very hectic, so I didn't really pinpoint who was in what ship exactly. I think the most important one is that Rosie and Pappy wound up in the Royal Flush, which, as we've said, winds up being our only fort to return. There's one called All Our Go. Bucky's ship had a nice "Hey Adolf, fuck you, your friend
Yeah.
Buck Clevens" painted on one of the bombs.
Yeah.
So it's just the boys strapping up and getting ready to go. And sure enough, 17 forts take off to begin the mission, and we get this flash to Crosby, which is kind of just emphasizing what you were talking about with, I guess, the survivor's grief. But he just said, hey, it became the hardest part of any mission is when they left, just the anticipation and the waiting, because no matter how well I prepared, now that I'm in this role as group navigator, once they were gone, it was out of my hands, and I just had to hope for the best and hope my boys made it out.
Yeah, that's, well, I can't, I would be interested to hear them talk about almost like the contrast, because obviously Kraz hated flying. It seemed like, so it there's obviously a different. It's, I don't know if you could pick one or the other, but I mean, he seemed to imply in the quote that this was actually worse than like the anticipation of getting in the plane, flying, waiting for the flak to start, all that kind of stuff. So I guess you just feel a higher level of responsibility.
Yeah, it's also been a common theme that everybody, even when they are taken off of flight duties, they want to be up there with their comrades and with their
Mm-hmm.
men. If the people around you have to be suffering, you want to suffer with them. I guess that makes sense. But Bucky did it when he was forced into the, oh, I forget what his position was, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
air exec.
air exec, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So we take to the skies, and like I said, they make it pretty much across the channel, business as usual. We have fighter escorts circling, but we kind of meet up with Bucky as he comments that, okay, we're losing a fourth fort to mechanical failure. So they started out with 17, which is a low number. Now they're down to 13, which is a very low number.
And we've learned too that the the lessening of numbers is just they're that much more of sitting ducks. They've enforced. I think obviously it feels like common sense at this point, but I think the show has done a good job over these episodes where we're thinking this already before being shown it. Like we're kind of gaining this level of I want to say I
Yeah.
guess familiarity with their plight and their situation before they even have to show us that things are going to go wrong.
Yeah, and like I was kind of talking about last episode, without the fighters, I mean, the bombers are meant to be their own defense. So the less bombers you have, the less defense you're going to have. He also notes that, as I've mentioned, the 95th and the 390th are the other two accompanying groups. And he also states that they are both a little bit further away than they
Mm-hmm.
are. So the formation isn't very compact. And again, one of the things that the show has done well is that if you drop formation, you're going to be ripe for the picking for the German fighters. So
Yeah.
that's just more and more setting the stage that they are low in numbers and kind of not in an ideal formation to protect themselves.
Yeah, just a perfect storm for a bad time.
Yep. So Bucky kind of sends Brady's usual co-pilot to the tail gun, and we have this Bucky's Bucky's in the zone, so we'll give him a pass.
Yeah, that's true. He is in his zone.
What is was it Dom Mazzetti who carries the water bottles and it's
Yeah,
just like, not now, boss.
it's cheap, but yeah.
I'm not chief. I'm in the fucking zone.
That's
There's a
I mean, it's
comparison
literally
for you.
Bucky right here. That's literally
Yeah.
Bucky. That's funny.
We do get this nice little pre-use check, Bombardier, can I pull the pins? How's the oxygen looking? I do just like I get a kick out of all the military garb and them just going through like the basic checks and stuff. It's so complex
Yeah.
for someone like me to try and understand, but they're just, routine operations. It's cool.
There was, I think it was here too, maybe. Because I don't think it was when they were on the ground. I guess they did it on the ground and up here, but we got a great shot of like slowly almost like walking through the whole plane. I feel like we got a really good
Mm.
idea of like scale, how like small it was in certain parts, big in other parts and things like that. That was really interesting.
I'll send you a link. I actually saw a really good diagram of what the positions on a B-17 are. And I haven't looked too much into it, but I have heard that people are a little bit grieving about some inaccuracies of
Okay.
how the B-17 is being portrayed. So maybe for next episode, I'll be sure to do a little bit of research on that. Though I digress. So, as it always does, the flak begins to start. Immediately, they lose two more people. Lauro and Stymie are down, so 13 becomes 11 forts remaining, and they still have 3 minutes to the IP, which doesn't seem like a lot,
Yeah.
but boy, is that a lot.
Yeah.
So I think they have, not I think they do have a gunner named Harry Clanton who gets killed by the flak, and that's just another one of these shots with someone with their face blown off. Just the grisly horrors of war. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine trying to man your station with what is now a corpse sitting next to you. That's got to
Yeah.
rattle you down to your core.
And they were just joking. I want to say it was the same. Like they're joking, like, "Oh, did I ever tell you how much I hate Flack?" And he says, "Not today." You know, so they talk about it
Yeah.
all the time. That was like a funny little. And then it was bang, and it was like, "Oh my god, okay, fuck,
Yep.
we're literally off to the races."
Yep.
Yeah.
And, if you hate Flack, you're going to hate when the Flack slows down even more because that means the fighters are coming. And sure enough, I feel like the show made a point to show that this was just an absurd amount of enemy fighters that were coming at them. And the research I've done on this monster mission was there were hundreds of fighters just wave. Usually it's the fighters come in and then they peel off and they have to circle around for another attack run. But they just had wave after wave after wave after wave that would just like pierce right through the formation. Firsthand accounts said that they were flying so close to the forts that they could literally pinpoint the scarves of the enemy pilots from their cockpit,
Oh.
which I think the show actually purposefully had that slow-mo of a
Hmm.
fighter going by where you can really make out the pilot. They're just getting crushed here, and I think the
That's.
show did a great job of showing it.
I just can't imagine. This episode was obviously, so we've talked before that I'm not the best flyer in general. I was
Yep.
legitimately like feeling it in my toes, like my gut, like I was having a physical reaction hard to this episode, and it got worse as this mission went on, and it was just like it's just crazy to watch, and it's fucking crazy that this is all real. Like this all happened, like you're saying, it based off of firsthand accounts. I just cannot imagine having to do this and go through this.
It's absolutely insane. This episode, actually, my roommate popped out into the room and sat down for a cool half an hour. He was like, Hambone, no.
Yeah,
He was
it's
getting
tough.
really into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so pretty quickly, Brady tries to give the ship to the bombardier as they're approaching the IP, and I'm sorry, Brady is the co-pilot to Bucky, if I haven't
Mhm.
said that. So we're talking about the same plane. They lose two more engines. He can't keep this thing level, so they sound the bailout alarm, salvo the bomb, shoot the Norden bomb site. They do that song and dance with Bucky having to leave the wings lead in the formation. Crank actually takes the lead here. The remaining crew is able to successfully bail out, and then we actually have this moment with Bucky and Brady, who are trying to pull rank on each other. Brady says, "This is my
Yeah.
ship, you go first." Bucky says, "I'm the senior officer. You go first." Bullet holes go at their feet. Bucky says, "I'll be seeing you, John." Brady. That exchange actually happened.
That's fucking crazy.
Genuinely, they had an exchange like that, and I think Bucky recounts the most beautifully spaced holes started appearing at our feet, and I told him, "I'll be seeing you, John," and he jumped.
I they did I think the best job so far again of the experience of bailing felt
So good.
really intense. Obviously, we had the Quinn and the babyface was a lot very emotional, and that was like the countdown and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know what it was about this scene of them all leaving. Like I felt like you felt the force of them like leaving and hitting the air current, flying, and like just being still in the air while everything's going on. It's just again just compelling.
I think this one happened very quickly, which kind of helped with the intensity of the scene. Where in part three or part two, whenever they highlighted it, was kind of a more longer, drawn out sequence. I thought we were going to have another babyface situation when our boy got
Oh my
caught
god.
by his back harness and he's like, just freaking rip the release.
Just
So he
screaming his
gets,
head off. Yeah.
hopefully he made it, but at least he didn't get trapped on the ship.
Yeah.
But Bucky does successfully land on the ground, and he is now stranded in Westphalia, Germany. And that's really where we leave Bucky for assumedly a later episode.
Yeah. Honestly, good luck to Westphalia, Germany, with
Hey,
the zone that our boy Bucky is in right now.
yeah, true that.
Yeah,
So
wouldn't want to be them.
after Bucky makes it to the ground, we do return to the air where the rest of our POV for the episode is going to be coming from Rosie Rosenthal. And I, Rosie they're just showing his mettle as a pilot. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's the
in the
man.
face of this craziness going on around you, he is telling his bombardier to hold off on dropping the bombs because he's waiting for Crank in the lead to drop them. All of his crew is just like, dude, drop the freaking bombs, man.
Yeah.
We're good, and let's get the hell out of here. He's keeping his composure. Sure enough, the lead does drop their bombs, and then we do have a successful bombs away. And we've said it before, it must be the smallest of silver linings that these missions are successful in
Yeah.
hitting the IP, and it does look like they absolutely clobbered the IP.
It was awesome the way, because they showed us earlier, and we just talked about it earlier, where Crank was having a lot of philosophical trouble, it seems, with this mission, the timing on Sunday, the cathedral, the residents, I guess you could say, all that kind of stuff. And to then have, he becomes the lead, and then we have it from Rosenthal and his crew's perspective of waiting for Crank to drop the bombs, and that he has to give it, so we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting, and it's like, is he really going to do this after we just lost all these planes? Like, is that actually going to be how this mission ends? And then they drop, and it was like, ooh, okay.
Chain of command, man.
Yeah, it was well
We've
done.
talked about it before, but very intense scene for sure. But we do get bombs away. And actually, we didn't say it. The one dude took a piss in what looked like a condom, threw it out, and was just like, bombs away, boy.
They do. I mean, there's just, at the end of the day, it is just guys in their fucking early 20s. Just
guys being dudes.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, I guess.
For sure.
Oh, that's funny.
Right after bombs away, we do have our boy de Blasio gets hit bad in the tail. He's gushing blood out of his leg, but he is going to survive. The flak stops again, which we know what that means. Just more hordes of fighters coming in. But before the fighters come, we do have the calm before the storm, and Rosie starts humming a song called The Chant by someone named Artie Shaw. And this is to just calm the nerves of the crew. Just reel it back in, boys. Kind of one of those things where you need a leader to be a leader. And that's just, okay, let's all focus up. Let's realign ourselves.
Yeah, he's a beast.
You need a leader. Honestly, if you don't have someone who is composed in these situations leading you, like, what can you do?
That's what I was thinking in the scene where Bucky hops off of the Jeep and trades the jacket. I wasn't a thought of a commentary on he's a bad leader for doing this, but that I was just, the wheels were turning in my head thinking, like, he is still a young guy who is in this emotional place, but he is still like their commanding officer. So just having to kind of pretty much be forged in this crucible as a human being at the ripe, tender age of, I don't know what age Bucky is specifically, Rosie is specifically, but, young 20s, maybe are they even 20, some of them. So it's just, I mean, we know that Lemons is 19. It's just unreal to think about.
Agreed. It's hard to wrap your head around, for sure. I feel like we say that every episode, but it still reigns true.
Yeah.
So the fighters do come again. Crank's fort catches fire, and then it rams into She's Gonna, and they both explode. So our lead's gone. She's Gonna is gone, which is Bubble's ship, unfortunately. And we don't see any shoots. So the fighters finally subside, and Rosie's just asking, does anybody see anybody from the 100th? And we do not see anybody remaining from the 100th. Rosie is on an island out there, which, you want to talk about the anticipation is the worst part. Something's going to be coming for you again, and you have absolutely no backup. That is balls to the wall, 10 men against an army.
That shot of their fort and just seeing all of the ones, it like close enough to see, but far enough for it to really matter, was, I just checked how much time was left in the episode, and I was like, oh no. I was like, there is way too much time left in this episode for this to go anywhere but bad.
Yep. I mean, it was Jon Snow in the Battle of the Bats. Bastards just picking up that sword and
Oh my god, it worked,
going against a cavalry charge.
dude.
But
This was unbelievable flying.
yeah, I mean, these forts, I don't know anything about anything in reality, but these
Fair.
forts are depicted as these giant behemoth turtles, and the fighters are just these jackrabbits zipping around. From the research I'm seeing, Rosenthal did take similar evasive actions like is depicted in the show. Like he did some piloting to get his boys out of there, and it seemed like he put his gunners at advantageous
Yeah,
positions to be able to return fire. And if you don't have a defensive formation, that's, I guess, what you got to do.
yeah. I mean, you got to go on the offensive. I get. It's just it was crazy when he's telling them hold on, and then we get the shot of the gunners in the back, and they're just holding on to stuff, and
Yep.
they're just going sideways, and we're looking through the window, and it's straight down, and they're just popping the guns off, and I would have been puking everywhere.
It's insane. It is absolutely insane. But that's really what we see. I mean, the Gunners get 3 confirmed kills here, but then we just flash to Thor Babbitt and we get a little bit more calm where Lemons is just playing with the British kids, teaching them about 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
And we flash from Lemons and the kids to Harding, Major Kid, Crosby, and another guy who I don't think has had a name drop yet, but his name is Red Bowman. He's kind of the redheaded
I
guy,
think they've called him
obviously.
Red.
There you go. So the 4 of them are just anxiously waiting for anything. And the first ominous red flag is that a fort from the 390th returns, and he gets on the horn and says, "Hey, pilot, do you know where you are? This is 100th Air Base. Do you know where my boys landed?" And he hangs up. He says, "They told me they're all gone."
Yeah, immediately your mind goes to Kraz just because this is the first kind of mission they've shown that he helped plan at this level. And the last time we
Yep.
saw him is him talking about the anticipation and waiting for them to get back type of deal. And it's just like, oh, just like an absolute soul crusher. There's just no other way to describe it, it feels like.
Absolutely. And it is that survivor's guilt, which I'm sure they're going to get into next
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, you put it, you're just left to think. I don't know. You're just
Yeah.
left to think. You lose all your friends, your brothers in arms, and you're just left to think about what if. But that's kind of getting us towards the end of the episode here.
Mhm.
After the 390th lands, or the one plane from the 390th, we do have Rosenthal land, and he is the only fort, as I've said, that returns from the Bloody Hundredth from this Munster mission. He's got that 1,000 yard stare. I mean, he's looking over the wreckage of his ship. And I do want to say, in reality, his ship returned with 2 engines shot out. There was a hole from a rocket in the starboard wing, which is the right side wing for anybody keeping track. There was also discovered to be an unexploded shell that was later found in one of the wing tanks. And they speculate this either could have been insane luck for the crew, or it could have been benign sabotage of a slave laborer in a German factory that just made a dud bomb.
Whoa.
Which is crazy to think about, that
Whoa.
that's doing your part in the war effort. You are just being
Yeah.
forced by the Nazis to make bombs. You're just,
What do you even think, like, learning that information as someone on that plane?
thank your lucky stars for someone out there looking out for you.
That's just unbelievable. Holy
That's
shit.
that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really all I got to say. I mean, it's and they're watching their crewmates. This, I mean, Rosie at this point. Is Rosie? It's I mispronounced it last time. Is it? It's Pappy with a P.
Pappy.
Pappy. They're just kind of watching the bodies get pulled out of their plane, put on the stretchers into the ambulance. We have Lemons, who obviously wants answers. He's right there, and he's like, okay, where the fuck is everyone else type of deal. And again, they're so strict. Rosie especially seems very strict with himself.
Yeah.
He feels like you maybe could have been forgiven for breaking this procedure of getting to interrogation before saying anything type of deal. And
Well, I'm not sure if it's so much just he's strict with his discipline or if
That's fair.
look, I'm going to say what I absolutely need to say about what the hell just happened in interrogation, but it is not my job to inform
That's
you
fair.
of the losses. I just came back from hell. Give it a break, Lemons. But sure enough, that takes us to interrogation. And as it's been depicted previously, it's this chaotic, bustling, everybody screaming over each other,
Yeah.
trying to break the news. And this one's invading Maiden.
It was, yeah, it was uncomfortable.
No record. It was. I mean, it was an intimate thing. It was all the head honchos and just this one singular crew, what's left of it. No record on everything. In the middle of it, Rosie just has to say there wasn't much time for logs. It was bad up there.
Yeah. We had the one guy whose name I didn't catch, but he's on the way back too. He's like, I'm never going
Mhm.
up there again. I don't care. Like they can't make me. And he's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the one that blows up here at Red and
Yeah,
is, I
same guy.
just told you they exploded. And then he kind of walks it back and says, no, sir, no shoots.
I like that in these moments, even the higher ups allow them that emotional release. If he doubled down on it and kept yelling at him, I'm sure there would have been a reprimandation, but he gives him a look and he reels it back in and
Yeah.
remembers his place. But it's
Yeah.
tough.
You
It's
just
tough.
feel how empty that room is and how quiet that room is. It
Yeah.
just was, it, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just going to repeat myself by saying, I kind of said at the start, it's just like the way that the episode was shot adds so much to already emotional content. It just was a good episode.
I would agree. Aren't they all?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fair.
And that's really it. We do have this final scene where Crosby goes to Bubbles' bunk and pulls out the note that we hadn't explicitly said it at the beginning, but Bubbles had pre-written a hey Gene, your husband Crosby is dead. Best to hear from me, but Crosby reads the note and it's very well written. I mean, he starts it off by saying you already know this, but Crosby is my best friend in the entire world. You know,
It's just, it's, it must have felt so unbelievable to have that letter. Like, how emotional is that? And I don't, I hesitate to use the word lucky because of the situation,
yeah.
but to know that your best friend wrote that letter in the same mindset that you're currently in, and to be able to have that letter, and like there's no reason for him to kind of like it had been a lie type of, I don't know if I'm saying these things the right way. It's just, I don't know, that concept, that idea, I think really got to me and what made me very emotional watching this episode at
Your
this.
best friend just passed away and you have a written letter that is the core of his heart, how he felt about you. So
Yes.
you kind of just it's something to hold on to.
Yeah, it's just like it's just unbelievable. I can't imagine what that felt like in that moment. He gives himself kind of the ability to feel it for maybe 3 heartbeats, and then he's back to the task at hand type of deal. But it was very, very, very emotional.
It's
Because I
it's
mean,
weird.
when you lose people this suddenly, you don't get that opportunity. I mean, how many people are getting that opportunity in this war like that?
Yeah.
It was just wild.
Yeah, it's emotional stuff. I mean, we keep saying this is compelling television for more ways than one.
Yeah.
And Crosby sheds a few tears and we have a fade to black and that is our episode. I did allow myself to look at the trailer for the
Yeah,
next
so did
episode. Yeah, so it looks like
I.
we have a little bit of Bucky on the
So did
ground, this
I.
time in Germany, not in
Yeah.
Belgium. So definitely behind enemy lines. And it does seem as though Rosie and Crosby might get a little bit of a reprieve from the action. Like I said in the beginning, it looked like they were at some sort of an estate. So maybe
Mhm.
they get a little bit of a leave after 3 straight back to back to back missions. But I also did a little bit of a research. This was October 10th. Someone said the people that survived October 10th had no clue what was in store for them on October 14th. So that's all I'm saying.
Holy moly.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm shocked almost that, and again, because it's not a story being told, it's history
yeah,
that's been recorded. It's just that we were excited about the Quinn and Bailey storyline and being on the ground type of deal. And we just have more of it now. So we'll just see. I'm just interested. This is to say, I'm interested to see how the next episodes break down, like how much time is given to each of these
storyline.
storylines. Because we
Yeah.
know at this point we've got potentially four, you
Still
know?
going to be in the air. I think we're going to get Buck in the Stalag. We're going to have Bucky on the ground in Germany. And yeah, Bailey and Quinn making
Yeah.
their way back to England.
And
So
we have Kraz. I mean, I don't know if you're counting Kraz and Rosie as in the air, but I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
that as yeah, it's just we'll see it. We'll see. We got what? We got 6, 7, 8, or is there going to be 9?
I think it's 8. I could
Okay.
be wrong, but I think it's 8. I
All
don't know.
right.
This show is already evolved into something very different than what it
Mm-hmm.
was at the start, and I'm still interested and intrigued with where they're going to take it. But
Yeah, I'm really excited to for this like psychological exploration of Kraz and Rosie. I'm
for
just
sure,
interested in yeah,
there are only 2 left standing, and
yeah.
which is crazy to think about. But I don't know. You got any late hitters, or shall we call it an episode?
No, I think that's the ball game on episode 5 at least. It's
Hmm.
just good, man. I'll say it a million times if I've said it once. It's just fucking great. I really like it. Every
It is.
time I click play, I'm like, okay, this is about to be 50 minutes of just exhilaration.
Yeah, and I will say kudos to Apple TV. They are becoming, if
They're
HBO
good.
is still number one, or Max, sorry, Max is still
Yeah.
number one, Apple TV is
They're
right
2 for
behind
me,
them,
yeah.
catching their tails, and
Yeah.
Netflix is a basement dweller because they are the worst. And when you
Yeah.
see a trailer for something Netflix, you're like, that is a Netflix production, and it looks like crap.
And again, I'm just a week to week type of guy. So
Same.
I'll enjoy that we get one of these a week. If it was just pushed out all at once, I don't know. For me personally, I'm just more of a fan of this. And I think I
I'm
saw
predict.
something that it was the highest or like the best performing original series for Apple ever.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
Yeah,
they had the brand recognition already with Band of Brothers and the Pacific.
it's
People
true.
loved those shows. I'm sure they got a lot of people to subscribe just for this show.
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter and I like totally liked it to save it for myself and then like a dope just didn't think to have it up or anything. But I'm pretty sure it's something like that. It's like their best performing or most successful original.
I don't always peruse Apple TV, but this is the first time I've seen anything in their number one slot other than Ted Lasso. So it seems
That's
like
fair.
this is definitely, like you said,
Yeah.
performing very well for them.
And Ted Lasso probably was more of a build up, not like an
Oh,
instant
definitely.
smash type of deal. So yeah, same thing with Severance. Severance is popular kind of now
Hmm.
afterwards, things like that. So Blackbird
Yeah.
was fantastic as well. So if you want to keep going on Apple TV.
Was that Taron
Yes.
Egerton?
Yeah,
That
Eggsy.
guy? Eggsy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Eggsy.
That
He
was a
has
fantastic show.
he has a Tetris movie
Mm-hmm.
out too. I would like to watch that.
Yeah.
Just another thing I haven't seen. Add it
Yeah.
to the list, baby.
All right.
Part
That's all I
five.
got. Yeah.
That's all we got. Yeah, as always, if you like what you heard, give Bingetown TV a follow on Twitter and Instagram. Visit us on bingetowntv.com and subscribe to our show on Spotify, YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever else you may find your podcast. Once again, we are Bingetown TV, and thanks for listening.